So today I want to talk about the digest feature on the Supernote, but more specifically, I want to talk about why I failed at using the digest. So there's two mistakes that I made when I was trying to use the digest in my Supernote. So my first mistake was back in 2020 when I got the A6X, I think. I treated the digest as part of my note-taking process. So whenever I was reading a book or reading a PDF on the Supernote, or when I was in a meeting, I felt like I had to be creating digest on top of writing my notes down. And the more I tried to do that, the less I actually used the digest feature because became overwhelming. So over the years, I started realizing that there's different modes of working. So what I mean by that is that there is a time when I'm to gather the information, there is a time for when I'm analyzing information, as well as there's a time for when I'm writing or creating or archiving the information. So it kind of fell in line with when Supernote revamped their digest app, that I wanted to really sit down and look at what kind of workflow I would be able to do with this. So when I finally sat down and started digging into the revamped digest app, I started realizing also that the purpose of this digest for me in my workflow is not to help me capture the information. It's not a research tool for me, but it's more of a tool that will help me make sense of the information that I've captured already. And I'm going to give you 3 examples of how I'm using the Digest app in my workflow. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you the second reason why I made a mistake in the Digest app. So the second mistake is that I completely ignored the Supernote Partner app. So I treated the Partner app similar to the Digest app, where I just didn't use it. And I was having issues signing in multiple times back in, I don't know, 2020. And I finally got in after like 4 attempts to log in. And if you've been with Supernote long enough, you'll know that the partner app that we have now is like leaps and bounds to what it was before. So I can go on and on and on talking about the partner app and how great it is, but this is not what this video is about. So right now I'm going to show you my first example of how I use the digest. Okay, so there's 2 parts to this first example, and that has to deal with physical books. So this is going to sound strange, but just bear with me. So this part of the process, the first process of this example, does not require you to use a Supernote. So the first process is to just read the book. Read the book. I have to repeat that for myself because this was probably the hardest thing for me to really understand in this example, is to just read the book. So, or read the section that I'm trying to read. So in this process, I am not trying to summarize, I'm not trying to analyze, I'm just trying to basically understand and read the book or the passage that I need to do. And then as I'm reading, I am also taking a highlighter or a pen, and I'm highlighting certain areas where I think that will be useful for later. But the thing about this is that I am not highlighting every single sentence or every single word in this book. And that's, I think, an important point, because if I highlight everything in this book, then nothing is important, if everything is important. Once I finished reading the chapter or section that I wanted to read, then I switch gears. This is when I open the Supernote app and start creating the digest. So I actually prefer creating the digest in the partner app rather than on the Supernote itself, because having a full keyboard allows me to flesh out the ideas much faster than writing everything down. So at this point, I'm no longer reading the book, I'm analyzing it. So here, when I do my digest, I'm asking questions like, what was the main idea? What stood out? What does this connect to? So the digest feature in this section becomes less about preserving the book and more about preserving my thoughts about the book. So I think this is one of the biggest lessons that I learned about reading and distilling the information are two completely different activities. So when I try to do both at the same time, I usually end up doing neither very well. Okay, so the second example that I'm going to show you of how I use the digest feature in my Supernote is that I'm going to use a PDF as my example for this time around. So it's very similar to the first example. It's also going to be in two parts, which is pretty much the same thing. So I have a PDF like this, and I'm basically doing the same process as I did for the first example, where I'm highlighting certain things that stand out to me, and I'm going to just read the PDF. I'm going to limit myself to as to the annotations here. So I prefer to use only the highlighter part of this. So once I finish reading and highlighting all the things that I wanted to highlight, then I will go to the second part, which is also going to be the Supernote Partner app here. And here, this is actually easier for me than the physical book because this lays flat like that. So I can see the source material here. And then as I'm looking at the different highlights, I'm creating the digest on the Supernote Partner app up here. And then the final example I'm going to show you comes from meetings. And this is probably where the digest has become the most useful for me in my day-to-day work. So typically in our meetings, the meetings are all recorded. So my focus in the meeting is entirely to take notes and participate in the discussion, and then creating digests and recapping the action to do items will be happening later. So I'll do my notes, and then once the meeting is over, I will use the meeting transcription and use it to fill in the details as to what I may have missed in my notes and while actively participating still in the meeting. So I like to do that because I like to I can see what action items that I need to follow up and important key concepts I may have missed during when I was paying attention to the meeting. So what ends up happening is that this isn't just a transcript of the meeting, it's a distilled version of the meeting. So instead of rereading all these pages of notes and scrolling through an hour-long transcript, I can just review a handful of digest entries and quickly remember what happened or what needs to be done next. Okay, just to quickly summarize what was discussed in this video. So for years, I tried to use the digest feature in my capture phase of my workflow, and it never felt natural. So once I started treating the digest as separate steps that happens after reading, after studying, and after meetings, then that's when everything changed. That simple shift completely changed how I used the feature. So it transformed the digest into something I rarely touch to one of my most valuable parts of my workflow using the Supernote. So if you want to read a companion piece to this video, I'm going to leave a link in the description. And that is basically the end of this video. But I would love to hear how you use digest or not use digest, or if you made the same mistakes I did. And thanks for watching.